I will start with. By the way, we could I guess do Vietnamese or English, but let's do English just for some of the panelists. They're more comfortable in English. All right. Who here can explain to me or know what does VC stand for? Anybody? So VC is venture capital. Tiếng Việt là nhà đầu tư mạo hiểm, đúng không? Okay, so can one of you explain what you do, why you want to invest in startup? If it's very risky? Let's just start with that. You all have your own microphone.
Okay, hi everyone. My name's Anne. Let me just quickly introduce myself. I'm a partner at Patama Capital. So we are an impact VC that invests mainly in Southeast Asia. And our focus is a company from a very early stage between seed to Series A. So very quickly, just coming back to what James was saying and asking. So for VC stands for venture capital, and the job of a typical VC is to identify, early stage or startup founders to invest in, which has the potential to deliver exponential returns in 5, 7, or 10 years. The exact return profile, the exact risk profile, and the exact time horizon will depend on the VC. Depends. I think for three of us here, we might have some similarities, but we might be very different. So in a nutshell, and in short, that's what VC do.
Okay. Tóm tắt lại là VC nhà đầu tư mạo hiểm đầu tư vào những cái công ty nhỏ và có tiềm năng mà tăng trưởng rất là nhanh. Okay, so the next question is, well, what do you look for in a company to invest in, and sort of can you explain a little bit why it makes sense for your fund, for example? So you guys manage a lot of money, and let's say if you invest in a startup, you put in anywhere from a few $100,000 to a few million, and maybe in the bigger company like Momo or Tiki, hundreds of millions. So how does it work? Anybody want to take that question? Yeah. Just kind of talk through how it works so people know, because I think most of the time people would be very surprised that if you want to start a company, there's people who's willing to give you the money.
Hi. Well, thanks, and James, for the interesting question. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Hoong, and I'm a venture partner at Monks Hill Ventures. Similar to my panelists here, we're investors, and we are so-called venture capitalists. So similar to what An has just explained, we are given the mandate in order to pick out the interesting bets that could hopefully return outsized outcomes, right? And when I stress outsized returns, what that means is our business model is we're looking for founders and businesses that hopefully can one day hit 100x. So if you put in 1, you expect 100x in returns. What does that tell you in terms of what we're looking for? There are 3 main things that we at our fund are looking for, and I assume each fund would have their own justifications. But overall, the number 1 thing in order to drive from 1 to 100 is it's got to be a big market size, a big problem that people are solving for, and a lot of people are willing to pay for it. How we find out about this market size is, again, the underwriting technology of each of our funds. But that is the number 1 importance for us in terms of what problems founders are solving. Number 2 for us is actually traction, because we can't not just go by what our founders tell us. We would have to look for what they have done in order to prove out that they are able to make it happen, right? So the startup traction is something that we would go in further and look for in terms of data points. Particularly for our fund, Monks Hill, we're focused. We are sector agnostic. That means that we're looking for startups across different industries, but we're stage focused, usually pre-Series A or Series A. Our check size is a bit bigger than, say, seed funds, so it tends to be a couple $1 million and above. But because of that, we also ask for a little bit more traction in that the startup founders have been able to prove out some product market fit, right? To show us that this huge market size is possible. And then lastly, but I would say most importantly, we look for a strong team. So we focus on the people. We are a bunch of former entrepreneurs that are backing the new generation of entrepreneurs. And so we essentially are looking for strong entrepreneurs to be able to back them and support them to scale their businesses. So those, in summary, would be the three things we look for.
Great, thank you so much. So I guess now you know a little bit about VC and how they work. Maybe there's one more question. I guess some of you thinking about starting your own company, and you know you can get money from these people, but maybe you worry like if I share with them too much, and would they take my ideas? Would they invest in my competitor? So can one of you guys cover that question?
Sure. Well, I'll answer that question first. We won't. We are in the business for a long time, and if any of us behaved unethically, then it would ruin our reputations. Founders would not want to work with us, so that's very easy. At the same time, ideas are a dime a dozen. Anybody can come up with an idea. It matters a lot about how you actually see it happen, which is why founders are usually at the top of every VC's list. Quick intro on myself. I'm Eddie Tai. I'm one of two founders and general partners of Ascend Vietnam Ventures, AVV. Before this, we were running a fund with 500 startups. Across our funds, we've invested in about 90 companies, mostly in Vietnam, but also in the region in Southeast Asia, in North America as well. I think you've probably heard of a few of our companies. Raise your hand if you've heard of Trusting Social. Cool. Elsa. Cool. Axie Infinity. Yeah, all right, cool. So those are a few. And each fund that we raise to deploy into startups, we are taking very early bets into these startups that have, unfortunately, a very high failure rate. And so the reason why all VCs look for some outsized return is not just because we're greedy for returns for the sake of it, but we have to offset the risk, the downside risk from the various potential failures. We need some winner to make up for all those losses. So yeah, that's just the last clarifying point there. We're not just gambling for the sake of it.
Okay, so in case you guys missed what that means is, I'll probably say it in Vietnamese so it's maybe clearer. So những cái công ty còn nhỏ thì khá là mạo hiểm đúng không? Cho nên là đa số thì các bạn sẽ đầu tư vào những cái công ty mà có thể tăng trưởng rất nhanh. Thì khi mà ví dụ như mình đầu tư 20 cái công ty, 19 công ty fail, nhưng mà có một cái công ty thành công mà có thể là mang lại gấp 100 lần lợi nhuận thì nó vẫn là khá là thành công. Cho nên là có những cái quỹ đầu tư mạo hiểm như vậy. Thì dĩ nhiên là cái yếu tố quan trọng nhất là cái đội ngũ, và tại vì họ đánh giá cái đội ngũ là cái quan trọng nhất. Dĩ nhiên là cái độ lớn của thị trường cũng khá là quan trọng. Nếu mà thị trường nhỏ quá, cái công ty đó thành công nhưng mà cuối cùng là chỉ có bán được khi mà lớn lên chỉ có gấp 10 lần thôi thì nó không có bằng, giống như là các bạn sẽ không có đầu tư vào những cái công ty mà bị giới hạn vì cái thị trường nó quá nhỏ. Còn liên quan đến cái việc mà cạnh tranh đó, thì mọi người đầu tư vào là muốn công ty phát triển và muốn cái founder đi vận hành, chứ các bạn là nhà đầu tư, các bạn sẽ không có muốn tham gia vào điều hành công ty và cũng không có muốn copy và cũng không có muốn đi nghe từ bên đây xong rồi đưa tiền cho người khác đi làm, đúng không? Cái đó là không phải là cái mà các bạn muốn. Okay, hope that helps. So okay, I guess the next thing I want to do is just because we have a lot of people here that interested in learning about the upcoming trends and what's the different emerging technologies like AI or Web3 or fintech, etc. And so maybe I'll ask each of you to cover one sector. Talk about why you're excited about it, what you think is promising about it, and maybe also like an investment thesis. You could say, okay, We think that AI will change everything. A lot of content will be created for free, for example. Like your investment thesis. So let's start with the hardest. Well, no, let's start with the not so hardest, but I think in my view, one of the very promising and realistic sector. Let's talk about fintech first, and then we talk about the other two later. So who wants to take fintech?
Happy to go first. So I think just to explain a little bit, so we're an impact VC, which means that we're trying to create a net positive impact to the society through the investment that we make. So we definitely after financial returns, but at the same time, we also after impact returns and really changing the life and improving the economic lives of the population in Southeast Asia. So linking to that point, it's exactly why we have been very passionate about financial inclusion as a theme and why fintech has been one of the strong focus of Partama Capital as a fund. So, for example, when you look at Vietnam now, and if you just isolated yourself in Ho Chi Minh City, I think you can just walk down the street and manage to make daily purchases just simply from your phone and making bank transfer or using Momo or VNPay, right? However, just look back in the history just 3 years ago, that wasn't the case. And I think that COVID-19, probably the only good things about COVID-19 is really help leapfrog the behavior, the digital behavior of Vietnamese consumers to the point that right now, I think in 2016, when we look at 70% of the population were unbanked, that ratio has now dropped to somewhere closer to 30 or 40%. And that's great. But it is not because that we have seen the big unicorns like Momo or VNPay that we are safe to assume that we're done. We don't have to do more to bring more, fintech innovations to the country. Because when you look at financial inclusion ladder, payments is just at the bottom. The next step is on lending. How do we bridge the financing gap that probably you as a consumer, you haven't faced it yet because you have buy now, pay later, you have Shopee Pay, or you can just get a call FE credit and get a loan easy. But then the moment you open a business, I guarantee to you, the shortest time it takes for you to get a loan approved will be at least 2 months. And you probably have to put down your house or your flat as a collateral. So the financing gap remains to be solved in Vietnam. After the lending gap, we move on to insurance. So insurance, Vietnam is one of the countries with the lowest insurance penetration globally. If our insurance coverage is 2%, the global average is actually 7%, so we have a lot to go. And finally, the consumers, when they move up on financial literacy, people should be having savings to start putting into investment platforms like Infina, often James. Right. So we are at the beginning. I think we have been able to solve somewhat of the payment step in financial inclusion, but we still have a lot to go. And this is the reasons why, as a firm, we're very bullish on that. We have already invested in one company called Kiman. We solved the SME financing gap, and we invested in another company in the insurance space called Saladin.
Great, thank you so much, Anh. So fintech is payment, insurance, lending, and investment, and a bunch of infrastructure, including banking. Okay, so and you already invest in 2 companies in the space, Saladin and what's the other one? Kiman. And Kiman, right? Okay, great. So the next sector is of interest, I'm sure, to a lot of people. It's Web3, and it falls into one of Eddie's company, Axie Infinity, which raised a lot of money, probably the biggest raise in history of Vietnam startups. So Eddie, can you share a little bit about your view about Web3, and has it changed now that kind of things are a little bit cooled down?
So you started off this part with asking about what is our core investment thesis. So I'll start with that. Okay. And Web3 is definitely a part of it. In short, AVV is investing in Vietnam for the world. So what does that mean? A lot of people see Vietnam as a fast-growing market. And so and with lots of infrastructure problems to be solved, lots of services to be introduced to the market. I think a lot of gaps in financial services is one example, but that spreads to education and so on. We think there's a lot more potential than that here. That is a big potential by itself. Vietnam will be a giant economy in the next 30 years. But what we want to double down on even more is this notion that the world is more interconnected now than it's ever been, deglobalization aside. And so anyone, anywhere can build for the world. And in Vietnam, there are great entrepreneurs here already. There are people who have spent time elsewhere in the world, like other folks on the stage, have decided to come back here and build things. Even non-Vietnamese from around the world see that this is a great place to set up a team, to launch, to test a product, to launch as a first market. And starting with this great economy, with this abundant tech talent and young population, just going from there to other parts of course, Southeast Asia, but even beyond that, worldwide. And so that has been a part of our thesis from day one. I mentioned Elsa earlier. That was our very first investment. A majority of our companies, even if they're based here, are serving customers in multiple markets around the world. It's not that any team here can solve any problem somewhere else. Some things are very local. Some things require a lot of integration with the local culture and the local business. But certain sectors of technology are more suited for a global play. Web3 is one of them. Another one we'll talk about later is AI. But yeah, so on Web3, blockchain or crypto, all buzzwords in the same space, has seen a lot of ups and downs over the last several years, as you know. We are primarily a Web2 company, actually. So fewer than 10% of our investments have been in Web3. And we look at a lot of projects very skeptically. But we do believe in the fundamental long-term promise that Web3 offers. It creates a new structure in a world that can live alongside the existing structures and really empower different kinds of entities, individuals, companies, schools, communities, to do things that just current infrastructure, current centralized infrastructure can't do. And it was the promise, that notion that led us to invest in Axie Infinity, and we've invested in about half a dozen other Web3 companies. We know from the rise of Axie Infinity that with its success came a lot of speculative behavior and lots of whole communities in, say, the Philippines switching their jobs to play on this game and try to earn money. That wasn't what this investment was initially about, and it's not what the Axie Infinity team was thinking when they got started. It was a byproduct, for better or for worse, of what they had built. But what it comes down to is creating a whole set of tools that allows individuals to participate in creation and earn from it. And whether that's in the space of gameplay or, so that was play to earn. We think about work to earn, or play and work. There are all kinds of combinations that their core infrastructure allows. So despite the recent resistance in Axie Infinity's kind of trajectory over the last year or so, the infrastructure that they built is actually generating meaningful revenue. They're continuing to support in-house and third-party projects through their platform.
Cool. Thank you. Well, in the interest of time, we're going to cover this last sector. And Hung, will you do the honor to cover AI?
Yes, sure. So before I go into AI, I would say a couple of things in terms of our thesis, right? First of all, we're a regional fund, meaning we're covering Southeast Asia as a whole, like some of our counterparts here. So the very first question then is, why Vietnam, out of the landscape of 10 Southeast Asian countries? So in our case in particular, we're looking at the macro, right? And if you have, gone over some of the most recent research, Bain in particular has published one last year. If you look at each of these economies as, in the one same trend line, right? It turns out that our GDP per capita in the last 20, 30 years in Southeast Asia has sort of clustered into 3 groups, right? If you consider each of this as an investment, Vietnam is in the top group of overperforming, outperforming, and that is a 5x returns over the last 20 years. The second group is performing, and that is the group of Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and that's 2.5x. The last group is underperforming, and that's Philippines, a bit less than 2x. So this macro has informed us of why we pick Vietnam as one of the primary markets to double down. Despite the fact that macroeconomically speaking, as you have known, there are some setbacks on the global scene, right? So that's first and foremost. Then let's also talk about, particularly in Vietnam, what indicators we look at as investors, right? This country started out in the 90s of a GDP per capita of, like a couple $100 a year, right? Today, we have just crossed 4,000 GDP per capita, $4,000. It is an interesting milestone. And with this, in fact, we may be crossing, overtaking, a couple of strong economies in the market, in Southeast Asia in the next years to come. And so with that, coupled with the supply of human capital, which Eddie has just mentioned, we do call them sea turtles. It's a wave of Vietnamese diaspora that were trained abroad, sort of making their way back to Vietnam. And in the digital economies, you do need the supply of human capital, talent, in order to leapfrog. And so a couple of these macro trends inform us of where we're putting our bets. And so we're bullish on the future of Vietnam in terms of technology innovations. That's at the core of our thesis. Now, when it comes to Vietnam as a basket, and with the 4,000 GDP per capita, we think it's an inflection point that is going to change dramatically a lot of the products and services that the users are offered today, right? Which then informs us of course, An has spoken about the rise of fintech and all these products and services that are happening. Likewise, Eddie has spoken about the foray into Web3 and global infrastructure. We strongly believe in the similar things. We call them technification of products and services. And AI, Web3, or so-called are just sort of manifestations of how this technification happens, right? So AI, thanks to the hype of generative AI in the past couple years that we have seen, but actually it is just a subset of AI at the core, which in and of itself has been around for decades, right? And so our founding partners came from the bench of CTO, and technologists who have built companies from the ground up and taken public in the US times and over. We saw this trend happening, and it's a matter of time before companies all over the world going to deploy AI at a mass scale. And so we wanted to be here to support and to bring around the next generation of interesting AI companies. I guess the luxury thing that we do have is that I am sitting here and having my counterparts who have done the legwork of investing in earlier stages. And so, for instance, Elsa came to us for Series A. We became their investor. And now, as you know, a lot of users in Vietnam are using the speech pronunciation app Elsa. And to them, after having built a sort of a foundational business, it's a lot easier to build stronger AI products from the data sets that they have, right? Another interesting company that An mentioned is the insurtech Saladin. Is also one of our most recent portfolio company. And likewise, we strongly believe in the inflection point of the purchasing power that Vietnamese does have, and that's going to change the ball game in terms of what is to come. So in short, okay. That's.
Good, thank you so much, Hung. Unfortunately, we are out of time, as the organizer signaled to me. Maybe we'll just have a few questions real quick from the audience, and then we can wrap it up. Anybody in the audience want to ask anything? I know it's too short. I mean, we got quite a bit of a very deep topic to cover, but the time just not allowing. Yeah, go ahead.
A question for the audience.
Yeah.
Who in the audience is currently a startup founder or wants to start a company soon?
Raise your hand, please.
Just one? 2, 3? Okay. If you are a founder or you know a founder who's awesome, please email me. investment@avv.co. You know,
Hello.
the world is up and down in terms of venture capital and the whole economy, basically. But we've been pushing away anyway. We've been investing in about a company per month, one company per month this year. We'll find out in a few years if that's a good idea or a bad idea. But anyway, come take advantage of our money while it's there. So.
Yeah, and if you're a good marketer, or you feel that you want to join a very interesting and fast-growing startup, there's a lot of their companies that are hiring, I'm sure. And of course, there's my company, Infina. So we always want to talk to bright, young, ambitious people. Joining a startup is probably going to be a life-changing experience for you. So do consider that, and at some point, if you want to start a company, then again, you know who to talk to.
Yes, and at Saladin, the company I mentioned about, we're actually looking for senior leads in digital marketing. So please check out the page on LinkedIn. If you wanted to check the name, you're happy to drop me a message on LinkedIn. I'm very easily searchable.
Yeah, these are very nice people, and you can always invite them for coffee and share your ideas. So don't be shy, all right? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your nice discussion and nice opportunities for all of us today. Thank you, all the speakers and moderator. And here are some gifts for you from MMA Vietnam. Once again, thank you, our speakers.